Invest Africa, proudly brought to you by KPMG.
Hello and a warm welcome to this week's edition of Invest Africa. I'm Nozi Pombanjwa. Port Louis serves as a center for commerce and industrial activities. The city's contribution to Mauritius's economy has led the country to being more than just a financial hub in Africa, but also an influential link in between Africa and Asia. Pilani Nyalunga filed us this report.
Port Louis was founded by the French governor and colonist Bertrand François Mahet de la Bourdonnais in 1735. Situated on the northwest coast, Port Louis is the business and administrative capital of Mauritius. Packed with office workers during the day, it quickly quietens down after office hours, allowing visitors to enjoy a night out along the famous Cowden waterfront. The city is also known as one of Africa's busiest commercial ports. Tourism accounts for about 8% of gross domestic product for Mauritius's $10 billion economy. Europe's financial woes are still being felt in Mauritius, especially in the tourism sector. They were hoping to hit the 1 million mark of foreign arrivals, but recently downgraded this expectation. The government is, however, continuing to put faith in the future by investing in a new airport terminal for the Sir Ramgoolam International Airport, which facilitates most of the business arrivals in the city of Port Louis. This has raised its passenger capacity to 4.5 million a year. The city of Port Louis is also strategically placed to serve as a business hub for both Africa and Asia. The government of Mauritius has also adopted a policy promoting the development of Port Louis as a major refueling hub for the growing maritime traffic between the west and the east. There may be potential hurdles along the way. The newly signed tax treaty between South Africa and Mauritius comes into effect in 2015. This treaty affects companies' tax resident in both countries. It is feared that South African multinationals will relocate their investments from Mauritius to South Africa or elsewhere when the renegotiated treaty takes effect in 2015. Gabon is also another African country to sign a double taxation exemption deal with Mauritius.
Mauritius, as a financial center, has the policy to see how we can facilitate investments into different African countries. And we see that Gabon is one of these countries which have got a substantial amount of resources where foreign direct investment is flowing. And I think Gabon was interested as well to see how Mauritius companies could invest into their country. And Mauritius has always been an investor into Africa.
The World Economic Forum's Global Competitiveness Index for 2012-2013 ranked Mauritius 54th out of 144 countries and second in sub-Saharan Africa after South Africa. Another business component that helps build Port Louis' investment case is the investor-friendly environment, coupled with the company's ability to list in a foreign denomination. Sanlam recently listed its sub-Saharan African real estate fund on the Mauritian Stock Exchange in anticipation of its foreign investors. Pilani Nyalunga, CNBC Africa, Johannesburg.
Mauritius recently made a leap on the World Economic Forum Competitiveness Report position from 54th last year to being ranked 49th and currently stands as the most competitive country in sub-Saharan Africa, surpassing South Africa. Now, joining me in the studio to explain and explore the investment case for the city of Port Louis and Mauritius is Colin Grieve, Chief Representative Officer at Afrasia Bank. And our MBC studios in Port Louis, we are joined by Shamima Mallam-Hassam, Senior Director at Mauritius Board of Investments, and Jean-Claude, Partner at KPMG. Welcome to all my guests. Thank you so much for joining us. Shamima, let me perhaps throw this first question at you. What is the Port Louis advantage for businesses that seek to have exposure to both African and Asian markets?
Being a small country with very few natural resources, other than the white sandy beaches and the turquoise water, over the years, the country has emerged as being an investment destination. And if you look at how the country has evolved, it has evolved from being a monocrop economy to move into industrial development, into tourism development, gradually moving into services sector where we've developed the financial services, we've developed our ICT BPO, a vibrant free port, and now moving into an innovation-driven economy where we are developing the education sector, the healthcare, and now also the ocean economy. So if you look at what all these, how Mauritius has evolved, you'd see that there has been a gradual diversification in terms of sectors. Since 2006, the government has undertaken major reforms, and today it's easy to start a business. You can start a business within 3 days. You don't need any foreign partner. You don't need any local partners to start a business, so it can be 100% foreign-owned company. There's also no minimum capital that is required. We've also opened up access to property by allowing foreigners to acquire property for both business purpose and for residential purpose. We have also reviewed our taxation system, and we have made it simple and easy, taxation platform of 15% for both the corporates and the individuals. We've also opened up the country to attract foreigners to come, work and live in the country. And today an investor can invest and work and live in Mauritius together with his family. And it's also the same for professionals who work in Mauritius. We also have abolished exchange control to allow for a free movement of capitals, and since 1994 exchange control has been abolished. And I think added to all that, I would say that Mauritius also has a educated and bilingual workforce, and today we have a very young workforce, and literacy rate would be about 90%. We also have a very strong legal framework. We have a hybrid legal system, which is a mix of the French Code Civil and the English common law. And yeah,
I think you know, you make a lot of very valid points, and I think we'll also get an opportunity to unpack these and go into a little bit more detail. But perhaps what I want to do is I want to throw a question to Jean, saying that although Mauritius now stands 49th on the Economic Competitiveness Report released by the World Economic Forum, that does also mean that this is 49 opportunities to improve the ease of doing business. Given the evolution of the Mauritian economy and all the progressive strides that Shamima has spoken of, where do you still see opportunities, Jean, for continued improvement to see Mauritius maybe even break out of that 49th percentile and see itself moving even further on the competitiveness report?
I think the government has provided an infrastructure and an environment whereby the investors can thrive. For example, in terms of infrastructure, I think in terms of communication, in terms of education of its people, and I think all these have facilitated investors to do business in Mauritius.
Let me bring the conversation back here to Johannesburg here with Colin. Now, Colin, of course, we also know that for markets to actually, or cities to position themselves as attractive destinations for financial services, essentially they need to have two things. They need to have size, and they also have to have a number in terms of a well-educated population. And if we compare Port Louis in particular to big financial services sectors like Singapore or Hong Kong, what is it about Port Louis that is enabling it to differentiate itself as such an attractive destination for financial services?
Yeah, thanks, Nazipo. We're not as big as Singapore, but we're getting there.
Right.
No, seriously. I mean, as far as your question's a very valid one, and I would invite the viewers to search for something called CAMEL ratings in Mauritius, and see for themselves the quality of financial institutions that are doing business in Mauritius, both international and local businesses. And the financial services sector is growing. Mauritius is an international financial center positioned primarily, I think, to address the African and Asian markets and the trade and investment flows that go between these two regions. And I think as these two regions grow, and certainly there's lots of evidence that Africa is now the place to be, I think we will see the Mauritius financial sector grow in tandem with Africa.
Now, Shamima, would you agree and would you concur with Colin's sentiments that the sector is set up for growth? Because to a large extent, this is also dependent on a certain degree of rebranding and repositioning Mauritius as not only a destination for leisure, but also a very robust destination for financial services. Can you talk to us a little bit about the strategy of rebranding and repositioning that I'm assuming has had to take place for us to see this industry take off so well?
The financial sector has evolved and we have gradually over the years, government has been adopting the necessary framework, legislation to enable the development of the sector. We have also improved in terms of the products that we have been offering in terms of the Mauritius Financial Center. And today we have a whole range of products and new products that are coming up to offer to the investor community. But I would say that the financial center in Mauritius is solid and it's based on a strong legal framework that have put in place. We have also made sure that we adhere to whatever international norms in terms of the OECD so that we are compliant internationally.
Now, let me go back, of course, to you, Jean. To a large extent, you know, Shamima speaks about having to comply with international norms. And I want to throw a question of diversification at you. I mean, we see financial services taking off. We know that Mauritius is quite strong as a tourism destination. Are you seeing other sectors begin to take traction and as part of this broader diversification strategy that the Mauritian government has been pursuing? Jean-Claude.
What I can say is that the financial services in Mauritius is well regulated. We've got, as I mentioned earlier, adequate professionals, and it's got a sound banking system, and it adheres to the requirements of the OECD, and you know it's in a well-placed time zone, and it also has easy access to Africa and Asia, which are the two poles where the growth in economic opportunities arise. So I think that's one of the main reasons that will drive Mauritius as a international financial center.
Jean-Claude, I want to stay with you and I want to drill down a little bit into one of these services sector that Mauritius seems to be doing really well on, and this is, you know, business process outsourcing. Can you give us a little bit of insight as to why we're seeing business process outsourcing take off at such a rapid rate in Mauritius?
Well, you know, there are a number of situations whereby, you know, Mauritius is a preferred jurisdiction. When you compare to other jurisdictions, what is the sort of benefits that our jurisdiction can provide? We have a friendly tax jurisdiction. Also, the people to be able to help the investors in.
Let me come back to Johannesburg now. Colin, to a large extent, I mean, Aphasia is headquartered in Port Louis, but you also have operations here in Johannesburg. Why would you know, a business choose to operate in Port Louis from a fiscal regime point of view? How do these double taxation agreements with over 40 countries enable businesses to actually get more return on the investments that they make in Mauritius?
Well, for example, a South African company that has a operating subsidiary in Mauritius and is using that subsidiary to manage its international businesses, if it is doing business in countries where Mauritius has double taxation agreements, then when it brings its income back to its subsidiary in Mauritius, be it royalties, be it dividends or fees, it will get relief from withholding tax. And withholding tax in many countries can really sting. I mean, it could be as high as 20 or 25%. When countries enter into bilateral agreements with each other, the intention is to provide relief on things like withholding tax. So instead of suffering a 20% withholding tax, for example, bringing your money in from a country in Africa, you'll only pay 10 or perhaps 7.5%. So it makes good sense to use Mauritius for your international subsidiaries. There is no withholding tax to take your money out of Mauritius. So really what you see is what you get.
So very quickly, Colin, before we go to break, I mean, we also have this perception that Mauritius is a tax haven. How do we demystify and make a clear separation between being a tax haven and being a market which has a low tax regime?
It's quite simple. Mauritius is an economy that happens to have a low or favorable tax rate. it is a viable economy in every sense of the word. It does manufacturing, it does tourism, it does agriculture and so forth. So it is a viable economy that has a low tax rate. It is not a lump of rock in the middle of the North Atlantic in which they've stuck 20 banks and made a low and implemented a low tax rate.